Let's explore the law of mass. Now, we understand the law of mass physically. If a bus made of steel hits a standing individual crossing the street, the individual goes flying, the bus gets a few dents and could, with its momentum, continue on its way. Now, the psychological and emotional law of mass is identical, meaning if you have a raging, violent, intense man, woman entering the room, screaming, the lighter, subtler, gentler emotions are expelled out of the way, and fear or anger, who's this person coming in, is responded to. And when we're looking at psychological energy, thoughts and feelings, when a group all thinks a certain thing and an individual thinks something different, there is a tendency for a phenomena of breaking or bending over time in order for the individual to benefit from the survival, security, love and belonging, self-esteem that comes from associating and partnering with a group. So it's unusual to find one Christian, devoutly being Christian, surrounded in an entire city of Muslims with no connection. It's unusual. And if that person was to get married, fulfilling the drive towards offspring, it would be even more unusual for the partner to join the individual in their belief structure. Belief structures ripple out like memes. Children adopt the belief structures, the thought structures of their parents because the parents are bigger, because the parents control access to the 3 to 4 primary needs of the child: survival, security of survival, love and belonging, and self-esteem. A child internalizes the energy directed at them. If the child is hated or humiliated, the child takes that energy and identifies with the abuser and hates themselves and considers themselves a laughingstock. They don't confront the giant and say, these assholes may be big, but they're assholes. They have no more legitimate basis for holding on to these dogmas, these beliefs, than I do this approach and this perspective. They simply will win if we get into a confrontation. Because at 5 years old, you can't stand up and fight a grown man in a culture that lets little boys be bullied by grown men. Now, there's something flawed in the culture that entitles giant bullies to have children, that they can dominate, bully, and intimidate. There's something wrong in the culture that ensures and institutionalizes parental illiteracy. You can go from cradle to grave in our cult without a single hour of professional, competent parenting training based on data. You want to have a child and don't know what you're doing? That's fine. You want to drive a car and don't know what you're doing? Well, that's a thing, and things are important in a materialistic cult. So you got to get a license for that. But damaging other people's brains, no big deal. So in a flawed cult that raises flawed parents, the child is quite often correct in pushing back at the system in which they find themselves, but it's irrelevant in the law of mass. The child will learn through confrontation that the bigger one wins. The law of mass prevails over the law of intelligence. The law of intelligence is a bell curve of adapting technology. Technology is a pattern of energy that generates a higher state of well-being if it is intelligent. Intelligent technology delivers a higher state of human well-being than the state before, unless it's a technology of torture and pain. You look at a phone technology and you say, well, you can talk to your friends with less energy than you could before because we've invented a phone. You can enjoy shows with less energy consumed than you could before. You don't have to drive 4 hours to a major city to see your favorite band play. You can watch them here on your own personal screen. You conserve energy. So your well-being goes up, but you expend less energy. So you have a metric of intelligence. The intelligence continuum always begins with a minority. And as the minority succeeds, those around them witness, and the minority gets a little bigger and a little bigger. And pretty soon the effective technology is adopted by a majority. And over time, the current technology is replaced with new technology, which enters in the form of a small minority of people who develop the technology, utilize, then more that adopt the technology. The most intelligent technology, by definition, is always related to and developed by a minority. A minority is always smaller than a majority. The majority has the most mass and can dominate and suppress the minority. A distinct minority has the highest intelligence, as demonstrated by the competency of the technology that they use. So you have the law of intelligence, you have the law of the majority, the law of the bully. And these are always in tension with one another. The child may accurately understand that hitting them is doing major damage and should be screamed about. The law of the bully says, I'll hit you if you don't stop crying because I hit you before. And the underlying threat within the law of mass is I will kill you or disown you or hate you and punish you if you do not submit to my pattern. And the PBS series This Emotional Life reveals an accidental study. That's how emotional studies are done in the United States, accidentally, because we haven't cottoned on to the fact that emotions deserve at least as much science as trying to hook people into watching more YouTube videos than is good for their health, so that advertisers on YouTube can make more money. That has gotten a lot of funding. The science of emotion deserves an intense degree of investment. It's just that the majority doesn't agree. Now remember, the majority is always less intelligent than a distinct minority. So you will find a distinct minority of scientists, tearing their hair out, that the drive to all human behavior, human emotion, is not being studied scientifically and integrated into the cult. but a majority is shoving them down. Now, when an energy mass in a certain shape that's big interacts with an energy mass in a certain shape that is small, the smaller shape is affected by the bigger shape in a couple of different ways. If the small shape is hard and resists transformation, there may be a bounce phenomena, and so the direction is altered. But where you have malleability, and it's important to understand that in the human psyche, every single human being is yearning to survive, to feel secure in that survival, to experience love and belonging, and to develop self-esteem. Every human being is yearning for that. Because when they survive, feel secure in their survival, have love and belonging, and develop self-esteem, they feel sustainably better than when they don't, which is the underlying drive of consciousness, to feel sustainably better and avoid feeling chronically worse. In order for a human being to survive, to feel secure, to experience love and belonging, they must attune to the group in which they reside. They must connect through language, through law, through protocols, to the cult in which they are born, or their odds of survival, security, love and belonging, and self-esteem go down. It's the law of mathematics. Any isolated individual is dealing with lineal math. When the isolated individual partners with, attunes with, synergizes with a group, you're dealing with multiplication and potentially exponential curves of efficiency. Efficiency at what? Meeting the underlying drives. If you are one person and partner effectively with 5, you don't just get 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 6. That's lineal math, the math of the dissociated individual. You get 6 times 6. You get 36. You get a geometric equation. 36 what? 36 probable units of energy. Now, if you've got a halfway intelligent group, you've now got 36 units of well-being rather than 6. So the drive, and it's also very difficult to meet one's need for love and belonging in isolation. So there's a gravitational pull based on mass. You know, why does the tide move the way it does around the Earth? Well, because the moon is a certain size. And that which is transformative, that which is fluid, is pulled towards mass. Not enough to leave the Earth's surface and go to the moon, but to shift the tides. There is a gravitational pull physically to mass, but there is a psychological gravity that is towards social mass. It's the longing to meet one's needs with grace, to survive, to feel secure, to have love and belonging, to have self-esteem. It's a longing to activate the well-being that is possible and probable in a group relative to an isolated individual. An isolated individual or a group that is in a sociopathic relationship of distrust, fear, lies, and antagonism is dealing with lineal units. They may cancel each other out. You know, 3 people in the team are attacking 2 people in this other team. The net effect is 1 left over. You know, in confrontation, you cancel out the energy. It's like a tug of war. It's not available for what? For the production of well-being. When you partner, when you synergize, you have an exponential, a geometric return on investment. It's not one person joins the 5-person group and you get 6. A 5-person group in partnership and synergy gives 25 units of well-being. One person adds that group and it goes up to 36. You get 11 more units of well-being in intelligent partnership as you add a person to the group. Those are the geometries, those are the mathematics. And the longing for those symmetries, those geometries, those returns on investment lead the individual towards the biggest group around them, the most, in a sociopathic paradigm, dominant group around them. And so there is a willingness to transform one's thoughts, one's beliefs, one's bodies, to conform. How the fuck do you get an entire country of men to put on enormous, expensive hats that knock off in doorways? You go to England and these 400-year-old houses, in many cases, the ceiling and the door is too low. You bang your head. And who on earth comes up with the incredible audacity to come up with a top hat? Why? To generate the perception of height, so that I can appear bigger than you. Well, the king, the royalty. And then who copies them? Everyone who wants the fruits of being the king. It's good to be the king. Well, we can't be king, but we can wear a ridiculous top hat that causes nothing but problems, but allows us to feel like we belong to the cult in which we are living. And so that drive to conform, that drive to attune to the power structure, to the majority, to the cult, however inane, meaning there is a huge gap between the majority and intelligence. Intelligence references mathematics and science. Cult, dogma, represents the majority and references that majority. What's the majority doing? What's the powerful person doing? What do they look like? How do they talk? Well, I'm going to be like that because I want to survive, feel secure, have love and belonging, etc. Now, when a large mass of belief, you think about it. Why do Mormons knock on people's doors in 2s or 3s? The law of mass, when you've got 2 or 3 nice-looking, polite, purposeful, friendly people together, what they're communicating is we've got what you want. We've got survival, we've got security, we've got love and belonging, we've got self-esteem, and we've got purpose. We've found our road. How about you? You're an isolated individual who has time to open the door. Don't you want to join our group? And it's not about it's not about the intelligence of the recipe. It's about the competency of the group to provide for its own, or at least to appear to provide for its own. And so there will be a part like, I want to have your level of confidence. I want to have a friend who walks around with me all day rather than be alone here watching TV. You sure I'll get some of that if I believe whatever poppycock you're coming up with? Oh, yes, ma'am. The Lord takes care of. Well, what about this Mormon who died in a car accident and you didn't take care of them? What about this other one that, the elder bullied the younger one? Well, we don't talk about that because we're selling belonging. We're selling everything's going to work out well. Things would be wonderful if you just pay us this money, make this donation, join our cult. And of course, every good cult proselytizing and sending out their thing. America, what does it export? Hollywood movies. About what? Fiction. blonde girls with great breasts sleeping with nerds, doing this, doing that. You too can join the American cult. The fact that many of these actresses are being sexually abused, sexually harassed, most of them can't get work. That's not what we export. We export the mythology. The mythology that says if you just buy enough things, you too can be a dominant bully across the world and be successful and confident like us. But it's an act portrayed by a minority that are good at acting, that send it out to a majority, and it's the same thing. Come to America where the streets are paved with gold, and we kick our most vulnerable people out on the street and can't manage to house them or give them health care. That's the bit that isn't told. When a large mass encounters the small mass is gravitationally pulled psychologically to the large mass, wants to fit in. Please accept me. Please let me be loved and belong to your group. What do I have to do? Well, it's very simple. You have to take our shape. When this square interacts with this S shape, the square has no intention in a sociopathic dynamic of taking the form of the S shape. The square, in many cases, if you've got a sociopathic reptilian brain and a majority mass, is just going to move along the way it moves along. You can get out of the way. You can join us. We don't care. We're the big ones. We're the giants. Adopt to us or get out of our way. We're not changing for anyone. And abused children who met this dominant mass in bullying parents and incompetent parents never learned what love was. They didn't experience it. No one came to the rescue. No one explained what love was for a single hour. Do you realize that being part of the American cult, you can go through every institution in America and not receive a cogent definition for the word love? And this is not accidental, because if you had a cogent definition for the word love, most of the systems in place would be presented in their gap with that word. Meaning a cogent and intelligent definition of love is at odds with a percentage of education, with a percentage of the legal system, with a percentage of government, with a percentage of parenting, with a percentage of friendship, with a percentage of media, with a percentage of business. There is a gaping wound that is a gap between that which we claim to be espousing or moving towards. We all want to love more. We just don't want to be bothered to figure out what the word means, because we don't really want to analyze. That's not love, that's bullying. That's not love, that's trauma. That's not love, that's sexual abuse. That's not love, it's nepotism. That's not love, it is stupidity. It is the antithesis of love. An idiot couldn't come up with a worse way of doing that. It's not love to ram that down the throat of the cult. But we don't want to change. Cults are generally institutionalized to maintain the status quo, which includes the percentage of the status quo that is sheer stupidity, sheer cruelty. You know, that any objective person looking at that, you're going to cut off the tip of your infant's penis because they did that before? That's what you do in your cult? Genital mutilation? Yeah, I just figured it was okay. My grandfather did it. My father did it. I just thought this is the time of life when you cut off the tip of your son's penis. And, you know, I'm still alive. I don't have any memories of the trauma, so Hasn't affected me. I've just become the kind of man that's perfectly okay with cutting off the tip of my son's penis. Nothing wrong with me. So we look at these things, and it's like, yeah, but everyone's doing it. Maybe I'll just go along. In a childlike state, seeking survival, security, love and belonging, self-esteem, developing our gifts, etc., from an authority figure that commands the resources, the opportunities to do so. We don't want to make them upset. We want to make them happy so that they'll give us those resources, and then we can survive and have love and belonging. We may not have sanity and intelligence, but nobody else does either, and so it's good enough for me. The shape of thoughts and feelings shift, and it wears. You know, when you have to pay a price, to be different every single day, there's a part of you that says, I don't want to be different today. Maybe I'll just pretend. Oh, and now I'm treated a little better. I'm doing what I'm told. I'm treated a little better. Nobody's glaring at me again. Damn it, if only I could fit in to this cult. If only I could fit in, I too I'd never have to deal with hostility being directed at me. It'd be wonderful. I love it. Gosh, I hate the part of me that is me, the part of me that is real, the part of me that is distinct, the part of me that is an individual. I hate it. It's always getting me into trouble. You see, the reference point is the majority because of the law of mass. If the majority hates this part of you, the brain in a sociopathic environment runs from what is bigger. You have fight, flight, and freeze. You flee from what is bigger to you. You fight what is smaller to you in a reptilian paradigm. The majority of the group doesn't like this in you. So you run. You don't stay and lose the fight with the majority. You run. You run. And the part of you that wants to stand up and fight for who you are is the enemy of the reptilian brain that understands that if you don't run, you're going to be decimated. You're going to disintegrate. As a small mass collides with a large mass violently and is thrown out of the way, it doesn't matter who has the legal right of way. When a semi-truck with 80,000 pounds of steel bars on the trailer is barreling towards your crosswalk at 55 miles per hour. Right of way, intelligence, standing up for yourself doesn't matter in the law of mass. You get out of the way, or you were right as you die. You did have the legal authority to be on that crosswalk. And your corpse can go to its grave. So-and-so was found guilty of violating the crosswalk. This corpse has been awarded $10 million in fines from the trucking company. We're not going to bury the money in the coffin, so we've the government has taken it. And you can be right and be buried in a state of righteousness, but you're dead. It's the law of mass. Rather than disintegrate as the law of mass collides with the individual, a lot of what we do is flow with the majority. The crowd's all moving this way. I was going that way at 10 miles an hour. I think I'm going to make a 180 and I'm going to start going with the crowd rather than being trampled at the rate or a little bit ahead of the crowd. And now I am not decimated, disintegrated in pain. Now I am conforming, accepting, flowing with the majority who may not be right, but who could kill me if I go the other way. Now, in a sociopathic paradigm, when a small pattern of energy collides with a large pattern of energy, there is stress on the small pattern of energy, a lot of stress. That stress is experienced as rising pain. At a certain point, when the pain rises to a certain point where the empathic brain cannot register the pain, it's too much. It's like the ears hitting a sound so loud, it is stupefyingly shocking, and one is brought to one's knees. I can't function. The pain is too loud. It's too intense. I dissociate from the empathic brain. What kicks in is the reptilian brain, fight, flight, freeze. The brain looks at, scans the energy, it's bigger than me, run. And that's it. But there's no feeling. We've now induced a human being through a sociopathic engagement of a bully and a small one. There's no feeling, there's no empathy, and we have survived, we've escaped. Or we join the gang, join the bully, and become unconsciously the same, which means we are now adding mass to the herd that is trampling minorities to fit in. In an empathic and culturally literate paradigm, the larger mass attunes itself and regulates itself to the small mass. Why doesn't our cell phone explode every time we plug in and charge the battery? It's simple. The charger takes 120 volts at 20 amps and reduces it to 2 amps at 5 volts. The charger regulates and modulates the large energy down to the size of the small energy. You can then plug the phone in, and the phone becomes more competent than it was before, because the large energy down steps to the small energy and revitalizes it. It's called leadership, it's called parenting, it's called love. It's called attunement. When the large energy refuses to attune to the small energy, when you plug your phone directly in without a charger, the thing explodes, catches fire. It is violated. It loses its integrity. People in our culture go insane. They become schizophrenic. The larger energy did not regulate to the smaller energy. And the larger energy often sends a message to its abuse survivors. Don't talk about this. Go crazy. Have lies. If you don't, we'll kill you. End of story. How many schizophrenic young women have been molested by a parent? Usually in our culture it's the father. By a parent who threatened the child that if they told the truth of their experience, which is an overwhelmingly traumatic and massive part of who they are, they will be killed. It's just easier to go crazy. It's just easier to dissociate. It's just easier to drink than face a death threat by what feels like a giant energy that could kill us, that we already know is sociopathic. because empathic human beings do not rape their children. It takes the sociopathic region of the brain to pull that off, which means we're dealing with a reptile who our body memory tells us is 5 times bigger than we are, which means we've got to run. We've got to run towards insanity. We've got to run towards disintegration. We've got to run from the abuser and not confront the authority that could kill us for revealing the truth. So you have an empath, an empathic energy will attune to the smaller energy. And you have love, you have trust, you have partnership, you have growth. A sociopathic, it's this way or that's it. There's a tension between the law of mass and the law of intelligence. There's a tension between the reptilian brain and the empathic brain. The empathic brain is capable of love, but is also capable of being elevated to a level of pain where it shuts down. When it shuts down, the reptilian brain kicks in to survive a terrain that it recognizes is reptilian. The reptile says, oh, you're surrounded by reptiles right now. Human beings don't rape their daughters. Human beings don't abandon people on the street. Human beings don't fire someone just before they have a baby and blame it on the mother. We're in reptilian terrain. What you need to survive when you are surrounded by reptiles is the reptilian brain. You need to flee the bigger reptile. You need to fight and kill the smaller reptile, and then you will survive. We're just dealing with survival at the reptilian level. When you're surrounded by a sociopathic power structure, that is a step forward. Survival. Run from the bigger one, attack the smaller one, and you survive. It's how we evolved to the point where we could have a limbic brain, a rational brain. Even your rational brain can say, yeah, that is a sociopath who is bigger than me. I've got to run. Now, the law of mass colliding with the smaller object, the bigger object colliding with the smaller, the cube colliding with this S shape that's smaller, 10 times smaller, 20 times smaller, 100 times smaller, creates pain, creates violation, communicates to the brain that we're not among intelligent empaths, we're among self-absorbed sociopaths. And these are contagious viruses. A self-absorbed sociopath will treat someone else painfully to a point where that person's brain will say, I better kick into reptilian to survive this. I can't function and feel this level of pain. I need to know what a sociopath would do to a sociopath because maybe they could survive. Then the sociopathic brain kicks in and I say, they're a bit bigger than me. I know I'll run. But I'll get it back by, I'm being ripped off by this guy, but they've got the mafia with them. I can't get my money from there. So I'll go along with that, but I'm going to rip off the little guy, and they can't get me because I'm bigger than them. And I'll still survive. And the meme, the pattern, the new shape of this cube goes downward rather than being transformed. The degree of size, the size differential, the scale differential between the larger object and the smaller object, determines the degree of force and violation that is put on the brain to go downward. A large force of intense energy that is not attuned and that traps a smaller energy puts millions of pounds a square inch on the psyche to go down and down. Give up rationality, blind fear. Give up blind fear. Analyze size and scale, fight, flight, freeze, survive. And we do not ascend in our evolutionary path as individuals or as a cult or as a species until the weight that was used to ram us into a corner is removed by the majority that is responsible for misattuning and misogynistically attacking the minority with that weight. It does not remove. You can reduce an individual into a sociopathic state by using a large amount of energy out of attunement that is directed without regulation on an individual. And their brain knows how to keep them alive. Their brain has a 200 million year old program that says, I'm surrounded by reptiles who will not listen, who will not see. I want to survive. So I will give up rationality, I'll give up empathy, I'll give up feeling, and I will assess the world as a sociopath, as a reptile, because that is how I have been treated. And that weight was never removed from the nervous system of the psyche. The age at which that weight hit is still zinging and ringing with the unmedicated, with the unhealed weight of the object of abuse. And the message, you're not worth it. You're not worth protecting. You're not worth loving. You're not worth it. Bam. And the brain says, if I'm not worth it, nobody else is. We're the same. We come from the same cloth. We're the same pattern in a similar shape. How can I be worthless and someone else is worth something? It doesn't add up. And since if I attack the message delivered by a violent abuser, my reptilian brain is saying, no, run from that abuser. Flee. Get out of the way. Disguise yourself. Become one with. Attune with the abuser so you don't get hit. What's the message of the abuser? You're worthless. Okay, I'm worthless. Got it. Okay. Now are we in opposition? Okay, now we're simpatico. The abuser says I'm worthless. I say I'm worthless. We're dancing now, and I'm not being killed. I'm not attempting to bring a small shape into opposition with a large shape. But now my brain gets to work. I'm worthless. I'm worthless. So are you. So are you. So are you. We're all the same. We're all worthless. Why would I treat myself with dignity? Why would my abuser treat me with dignity? Why would I treat anyone else with dignity? The law of mass dictates the viral nature of human states. The drive to human needs and the gravitational pull of the majority dictates the viral nature of human states. There is no human state in our midst that does not reflect as much on the circle around it as the one in the center. There is no hate amidst a group that is incapable of hating and that is interested in healing hate. There is no trauma in the center of a group that is not capable of traumatizing its members. And there is no PTSD in the center of a group that is competent, psychologically literate enough to remedy the post-traumatic stress disorder with competent psychological medicine. The point is the circle creates the point. You have emphasis. The scapegoat usually holds the position of what is denied and suppressed in the group. But without the denial and suppression within the group, there is no scapegoat. And within a competent psychological framework, no one person is asked to be punished or disowned for the mistakes of the majority. In a reptilian paradigm, they are. The whole point of the scapegoat was to take an innocent goat. You got a flock of goats? Okay, let's pick you. You will be the scapegoat. Things haven't been going well in the village. Why haven't they been going well? Thunderstorms, this, that, the other. The gods are angry. Why? What about having an aqueduct? What about having a cistern to collect some of that water? What about rerouting and studying the science of floods and rerouting flood water so it doesn't wash away your home? What about having deeper foundation? Nah. I think what we're going to do is we're going to take an innocent goat. Here, this is an evil goat. Okay? The cult follows the leader. Stupid leader, stupid cult. Here's an innocent goat. What we're going to do, because this goat is the source of all our problems, is on the count of 3, we're all going to get rocks and we are going to beat the shit out of this goat. We're going to hurl insults at this goat. We're going to spray blood on this goat. We're all going to pummel this goat. And if the goat makes it out alive, it'll never come back. It'll go out with all of our shadow energy. The formation and invention of the scapegoat as a substitute for intelligent technology. Well, amazingly, stoning a goat to death and having less meat, because who wants to eat such tainted, cursed meat? So now you have less meat, less food, and you still don't have a cistern. And you still don't have a diversion path for the next flood. And you still don't have fly repellent. So you've got to pick another goat. How many goats do you go through before you starve to death, blaming the minority for the stupidity of the majority? Now, the incentive is strong for the majority in a narrow-minded sort of way. If you're the majority and you're stupid, and you have to do something about that, well, you have to work harder. If you can blame it on a goat, if you can blame it on this person or that person, well, it sounds easy. You convince yourself all will be well, the priest tells the people. The goat has been banished. The Lord has witnessed your sacrifice. Evil has been cast out. Be at peace. Oh, there's another rainstorm. Oh my goodness. Joey's village was, oh gosh, what are we going to have to do now? Oh gosh, we're getting low on goats. We'll just invent another lie. Every family in an emotionally illiterate cult picks someone to blame. Every country picks a group of people to blame. Let's take these sexually abused young men who tend to commit violent crimes, statistically correlated. The most heinous crimes are generally initiated by 14, 15, 16-year-old boys who have been repeatedly sexually abused by an authority figure. Now, we could start parental literacy. We could step up and protect our boys. We could teach emotional literacy and how to discuss shame. We could talk about abuse in schools. Or we could shame young men for feeling helpless, which they do when they're sexually abused. And after they feel filled with hatred and trapped in a dark place long enough, we can wait until they give back the hate that was given to them, the helplessness that was given to them. And then we can make exceptional cases in order to put young men to death by electrifying them as what? Appeasement to the gods? A new scapegoat? Because it's too much trouble to educate grown-ups to treat children with decency. Well, we're all appeased. We feel a little better, don't we? Every batch of underage children put to death in our country. Criminals, got to do something with them. Lock them up for 100 years at $10 million of public expense. That's a good one. We're not talking about intelligence. We're talking about herd mentality. We're talking about profound cultural incompetence. And yet the law of mass prevails and will prevail. The only question is, will the big ones, will the grown-ups, will we, who are now the big ones, figure out a technology that was denied us and that we were shamed for beginning to explore? As every man in my generation understands, their rank will go down just for acknowledging the intensity of their feelings. Will we, as the new big ones, take the opportunity to develop and practice technology that was not given to us when we were the little ones? And how do we get to that point where the one who is helplessly in hate, in terror, in rage, actually wants to participate in the transformation of an uncivilized, of an unwelcoming, of a frightened and shame-based cult?